Most of us are so used to filling every gap with something. Music, conversation, with distractions, that we've forgotten how to truly be with silence. We treat silence like an awkward guest at the dinner table, with something to be filled, explained, or escaped. But what if I told you that silence is not empty at all? What if it's the most meaningful presence of all? You see, silence isn't void, but it's not the absence of life. It's the space that holds life. Like the canvas behind a painting, or the pause that gives rhythm its depth. It is within silence that all things settle, like stirred water finally clearing. Thoughts soften, breath slows, and suddenly the world becomes not something to control or conquer, but something to listen to. When you allow yourself to simply observe, without needing to fix, name, or judge, you begin to sense a quiet intelligence beneath everything. There's a hum, a rhythm, but an order that doesn't shout but patiently waits to be noticed. The rustle of the trees, the rhythm of your breath, the way clouds move without instruction. You realize that life isn't rushing anywhere. It's unfolding, moment by moment, but with gentle precision. And in that realization, you're no longer apart from the world, you're inside it. But this kind of observation isn't the same as staring or analyzing. It's not about scrutinizing life under a microscope. It's softer than that. It's the kind of attention you give to something sacred, not because it demands it, but because you suddenly realize it deserves it. A falling leaf, a passing glance, the sound of your own heartbeat in a quiet room. You begin to sense the extraordinary hiding in the ordinary, but and perhaps the most profound thing happens when you observe yourself this way. Not to judge your thoughts or condemn your emotions, but simply to notice them as you would notice clouds passing overhead. You are not your anger. You are not your anxiety. You are the space in which those things arise, and just as gently pass away. This silent awareness is not passive. It's powerful. In silence, the mind has nothing to echo against, so it starts to let go. The past loses its grip. The future stops shouting. What remains is this moment, unadorned, unfiltered, and alive. So few of us have truly lived in that space, and yet, it's the only place life ever truly happens. Now, this doesn't mean abandoning the world or becoming aloof. In fact, it's the opposite. When you observe in silence, you begin to belong more deeply. You start to hear the quiet needs of others, the stories carried in their silence. You begin to respond instead of react, to see rather than assume. You begin to live in rhythm with the world, not in resistance to it. And perhaps this is what life has been trying to teach us all along. Not to shout louder, but to listen better. Not to chase meaning, but to slow down long enough to receive it. Because the truth is, silence isn't a void to fear, it's a doorway. But a doorway to presence, to clarity, to that deep and abiding sense that you are already whole, already held by something larger than yourself. The world doesn't need more noise, it needs more stillness. More presence. And when you observe in silence, you don't become less. You become more. More aware, more connected, more alive. Because silence is not the absence of life. It is the place where life begins to speak. We often see challenges as interruptions, unexpected detours from the life we planned, as if life itself made a mistake, or took a wrong turn. But if you look closely, if you slow down just enough to listen, you'll find that these so-called disruptions are not outside the flow, they are the flow. They are the rising and falling of the tide, the dissonant chords in a vast and beautiful symphony. Think about ague, has anything in your life that truly changed you ever been entirely comfortable? Has any growth ever come without friction, but with A tree cannot stretch toward the sky without first breaking through the soil. A flame's not rise until it has consumed what stood before it. And a soul, it seems, does not awaken until something unfamiliar shakes it from sleep. You see, the storm is not a sign of chaos. It is part of nature's cleansing. Pain is not a punishment. It's a signal, a turning point, but with an invitation to see more deeply. Yet we resist. We brace ourselves, hoping the discomfort will pass quickly, but with, not realizing that within it is the very message we've been unknowingly waiting to hear. There's an odd sort of wisdom that comes from sitting with suffering, not trying to escape it, but listening to it, watching it. You begin to see that it, too, has a rhythm. Just like joy, it arrives, stays for a time, and leaves. No emotion, no experience is permanent. Life breathes in cycles, birth and decay, expansion and contraction, gain and loss, and within all of it, there's a deeper stillness, something watching from within you unchanged. This is not about romanticizing pain or seeking it out. It's about no longer treating difficulty as the enemy. When we resist what is, we create more suffering. But when we allow life to unfold, even in its darker shades, something opens. A hidden chamber in the heart, but with a deeper understanding that couldn't have been reached through comfort alone. We tend to ask, why is this happening to me? But maybe the better question is, what is this moment asking of me? There's something sacred in that shift. Because suddenly, you're not a victim of life. You're a participant. You become part of its ongoing dialogue. The rain no longer ruins the day. It becomes the day. The delay isn't wasted time. It becomes a pause for breath. Even heartbreak begins to feel less like an ending and more like a threshold. But look back at the hardest moments of your life, not with judgment, but with gentle eyes. Can you see the subtle transformations, the clarity, the strength, perhaps even the compassion that followed? It's as if life was not trying to break you, to remake you. More spacious, more grounded, more aware of what truly matters. But and what's remarkable is how often, once the storm has passed, we look back and say, I wouldn't trade that experience, even if it hurt. Why? Because something in us knows that these trials are shaping us, not away from who we are, but into who we truly are. The river does not resent the rock, it flows around it, reshaping itself with grace. So too must we learn to flow with the terrain of our lives, not in fear, but with reverence, because every challenge, every fall, is part of a sacred choreography too intricate for us to fully see in the moment. So the next time life stirs the waters, don't just reach for the surface. Sit still. Listen, trust that you are not outside the dance. You are its rhythm, its motion, its meaning. Because the obstacle is not in your way, it is the way. Gratitude is a word we often hear, but rarely feel in its full depth. It tends to get flattened into politeness. A quick thank you, a passing smile. But true gratitude is real. Soul-deep gratitude isn't an action. It's a way of seeing, but it's a shift in perception that reveals the hidden richness of what's already here. It doesn't arise when everything goes our way, but in fact, it often emerges in the quiet aftermath, when the noise dies down and we begin to notice what remained, the breath in our lungs, the warmth of a hand, the quiet resilience in our chest. It's easy to be grateful when life is generous, but the kind of gratitude I'm speaking of goes deeper than that. It's not the result of life being easy. It's the recognition that life, even in its messiness, is already a gift. There's something profoundly humbling about realizing you woke up this morning, not as a concept, but as a miracle. That your eyes opened, that air rushed into your body without asking your permission, that the sun rose again even if you didn't notice. And maybe that's the heart of it. We don't notice. We're so busy chasing the extraordinary that we overlook the sacred that's right in front of us. Gratitude doesn't ask for more. It simply asks us to see what already is, the flicker of light on a wall, the laughter of a child in another room, the way water sounds when it hits a glass. These moments pass by unnoticed, like soft-spoken poets. But if we give them our attention, they begin to speak. And what they say, ISU, this is enough. You see, the mind loves to tally what's missing. What should have happened? What could still go wrong? It spins stories of lack, but gratitude rewrites the narrative. It gently reminds you, there is more right with your life than wrong. There is more beauty than your tired eyes have seen. And when you begin to live from that place, not from scarcity, but from fullness, you change your relationship with reality itself. This doesn't mean ignoring pain or pretending everything is perfect. In fact, gratitude becomes most powerful when it coexists with struggle. When even in sorrow you find something, one thing, to appreciate, a breath, a memory, a lesson. That's not delusion, that's courage. That's the soul choosing to remain open. It would be easier to shut down. Gratitude softens us. It slows us down. It reminds us that we don't have to chase life, because life is already here, offering itself in 1,000 quiet ways. A sip of tea with a stranger's kindness. The sudden awareness that for one brief second, everything is still. When we live in gratitude, we stop clenching. We stop grasping for more. And in that release, we find something astonishing. We already have enough to be whole not because the world has changed, but because we have. Our eyes open. Our breath deepens. We begin to see that what we once called mundane is actually divine. And what's even more beautiful is how contagious this way of seeing becomes. When you live in gratitude, you move differently. You speak with more gentleness. You look at others and see their light, not just their noise. Your presence itself becomes a kind of offering, but not because you're trying to inspire anyone, but because you've fallen back in love with life. So start where you are. Look around, not with hungry eyes, but with thankful ones. Not because everything is perfect effort, but because you are finally awake to the wonder that it's happening at all. Because gratitude isn't just a feeling. It's the soul remembering that it's already home. There's a strange comfort that comes when you realize you are not merely passing through life. You are life itself, watching and participating at the same time. You are both the dancer and the dance, the observer and the observed. The mind may try to make a division to say, here is me, and there is the world. But look closely and you'll find no clear boundary. But what you call you is a thread in the vast fabric of everything that moves and breathes. The wind doesn't blow past you. It blows with you, but the earth doesn't hold you up as a separate object. It cradles you as part of its own expression. Every cell in your body echoes the ancient rhythms of stars and oceans. You are not watching nature from a distance, but you are nature looking at itself through human eyes. And this realization changes something. It softens the idea that we must always control, improve, fix. When you begin to see yourself not as a problem to be solved, but as a phenomenon to be witnessed, a strange peace arrives. You stop asking, what should I be doing? And instead begin to wonder, what is life doing through me? It's a subtle shift, but a powerful one. The pressure lifts. The obsession with outcomes fades. But you start to understand that your life isn't a test or a race, but a movement in a much larger symphony. With one note among countless others, yet without your note, the melody would be incomplete. And it's in the act of observing, of stepping back just enough to watch the unfolding, that we return to ourselves. Not the self created by memory or expectation, but the quiet presence that has been here all along, before the stories, before the striving, simply aware. This awareness isn't passive. It doesn't mean sitting back and letting life pass you by. In fact, the more deeply you observe, the more present you become, and the more fully you can live. You act not out of fear or habit, but out of alignment with. You begin to feel when it's time to move, and when it's time to rest, when to speak, and when to stay silent. It's like you're tuning into something much older than thought, a deeper knowing that whispers rather than shouts. You no longer need to prove your worth. You begin to see that you were worthy the moment you were born, and every moment since has been part of this unfolding mystery. Not always easy, not always clear, but always moving with purpose, even when it's hidden. There's a kind of gratitude that arises from this state, not for anything specific, but for the fact that you're here at all, that you get to witness this world, that you get to be both a part of it and a mirror to it, that you are, in some quiet and mysterious way, essential to the story being told. And perhaps that's the most beautiful part, that the universe, in all its infinite possibility, is expressing itself right now as you. With your memories, your voice, but with your longings, your laughter. You're not a mistake. You're not separate. You are not late to the party of existence. You are the party, so live with reverence. Watch with curiosity. Speak less often, but with more meaning. Act, not from ego, but from awareness. And trust that you're already moving in step with something sacred, because you are not on the outside of life looking in. You are the pulse at the heart of it.